Do we have Councillor Dewar? No. Do we have Councillor Equi? No. We have present Councillor Ferguson. Do we have Councillor Gowland? No. Do we have Councillor Keat? No. Okay. Councillor Lockhart? No. We have Councillor Marsh. Do we have Councillor Nugent? No. And if I can just check, I can see that we have Councillor Handybode in the meeting to substitute for someone.
I am substituting for Gavin Keat.
That's lovely, Councillor Handybode. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and there are also a number of officers present today, and I'll hand back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. So, item number 1, if we go for it, is there any declarations of interest? No? Okay. I'll go to item number 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 6. If I could hand over to the Deputy Chair, because I wasn't there for this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I could move the minutes of the previous meeting as a true and accurate record, please. And if I could seek a seconder for that.
Yeah, so I was there in the meeting, but yeah, I will second it.
Thank you. I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Morris. And moving on to item number 3, and that's the capital budget monitoring 2024 to 2025. The General Fund Capital Programme, pages 7 to 14. And if we could hand over to Lorraine O'Hagan and Amy Roxburgh, please.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So this is quite a hefty agenda today. We have the old year reports and the new financial year reports as well for both General Fund capital, housing capital, and the revenue for both as well. So I'll take you through the old year just on a very high level, if that's all right, and then we can go into a bit more detail in the new financial year, if that suits. So the first report then is the capital monitoring for the General Fund Capital Programme for the financial year 2024-25, and that starts on page 7 of your pack. The General Fund Programme at the end of the year totalled 69.832 million, and we had total spend of 54.6 million. So we were in an underspend position of £15.1 million. Now that had been trailed through the tail end of the financial year, probably the start of this calendar year, where we were identifying where we had some multi-programme projects and multi-year projects that span both the financial years. So that didn't really come as a surprise to us. It was a little bit higher at the end of the year in terms of an underspend than we had anticipated, but that's simply down to timing. And what we're reflecting in the actual position at the end of the year just reflects the timing of spend across both financial years. In section 5, we're noting there we have some year-end accounting adjustments, and that's where we make a transfer between the revenue and the capital accounts to reflect the type of spend that's been incurred. And for instances where that happens, we take the funding with us along with the spend, just to show that we are fully accounting for our spend in the correct way. So that's detailed at the start of section 5. And what we're also noting then in section 5.3 is that we have a carry forward of the 15 million into the new financial year, and that forms part of our new year programme. We're noting there in section 5.5 that we have funding available to support the programme as it stood at the end of the financial year, and anything that didn't come forward in terms of spend in the old year, the funding was carried forward into the new year with it. So that's all in terms of the report itself. In terms of the appendices, Appendix A gives you the detail across the service areas in terms of the spend at the end of the year, and Appendix B on Appendix A Part 2 on page 11 shows you how we funded the programme for the year. And that's after taking account of the revenue transfers, the money that went over to the revenue programme. And that takes us on to Appendix B, which shows you the projects that have carried forward from 24-25 into 25-26 for completion in the new financial year. And what we've given to yourselves and was presented to Executive Committee back in June is a completion date for those projects as far as we knew at that point in time, and shows you when the projects will complete during the new financial year. And that's me for the year-end report for Capital. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. And, is Amy coming to this now, or is that
Chair, we'll pick up the physical progress in the new year, if that's all right, because the old year's complete, so it's more appropriate to give you a more current update.
Absolutely. No, that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine. So, are there any questions? No. Okay. Can we move that part of the report, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 4, and that's the Capital Budget Monitoring 2024-2025 Housing Capital Programme, pages 15 to 18. Again, Lorraine, please.
Thank you. So, yes, as you say, this is the capital programme for the housing side of things, and that starts on page 15. So you can see in section 4, we have a total capital programme for the year of 77.2 million. We incurred spend to the end of the year of 71.5, so an underspend of 5.7 million. We had previously, again, identified some slippage in the programme that we were expecting to happen, and that related to some delays experienced at Cairnswell Avenue in Cambuslang, where we had minimal spend by the end of the year, and also Brackenhill Farm in Hamilton. We're also noting there that the average purchase price for properties that we purchased through the buyback scheme, the market purchase scheme, reduced. So again, that was a benefit to the programme, in as much as we spent less, but still got what we were looking for in terms of number of properties purchased. And again, noting in section 4.3 at the bottom of page 15, we have then the carry forward of 5.7 to take us into the new financial year. Now, we have a programme again approved for housing for the new year for 25-26, and that had assumed a carry forward of 4.1 million. That's what we expected to underspend by at that point in time. Now that we've underspent by 5.7, we've got an additional carry forward of 1.568 to come into the new year programme, and we'll pick that up as we get into the new financial year. In terms of the appendices to that report on page 17, you can see the expenditure of 71.5, and you can see in the middle of that page how we funded that spend. And the final page in that report is on page 18, which is just the graphical representation of the spend and the profile of spend throughout the old financial year. And that's all for that report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorraine. I don't have any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Nope. Okay. Can we agree and note the report?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, item number 5. It's the Capital Budget Monitoring 2025 to 2026 General Fund Capital Programme, pages 19 to 44. And I'll hand back to Lorraine again, please.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the new year programme then for the General Fund, and what we've set out in the background there is what was approved back by Council in February time, a budget of 60.2 million. But what we're noting in section 4 then are a number of moves and changes that have taken place subsequent to that time frame, bearing in mind that's more than 6 months ago now. So what we've got then in our appendices is a bit of a trail taking us from that original £60 million to a budget that we now have for the current year of £73.8 million. So that takes account of the carry forward at the financial year end. It takes account of some exceptions that have been approved by Executive Committee in June and in August time. And it also takes account of what we think we will realistically spend as a council on the General Fund programme for the current year. So, as I say, our revised programme is £73.8 million. In terms of the forecast, we're still assuming a full spend for the year, and obviously if there's any moves and changes to that, then we can bring them to members as we go throughout the year. So if I can take you to the appendix. Appendix A gives you the first set of changes, I suppose, from the base budget that was approved back in February. So we've added in the investment monies that were allocated as part of the budget, and we've brought in only the amount that will relate to this financial year and that we think we will spend this year. We've brought in the carry forward that came through at the end of the year. We had a minor change to our general capital grant, again, that we've taken account of, and we've also got additional funding for active travel that we have allocated to the programme. We're noting there just at the bottom of page 22, we have made some movements around in terms of how the budget's allocated or what the budget's allocated for in terms of climate. And then we've looked then at the top of page 23 about that element that I mentioned about what's a realistic spend profile for the current financial year. So you can see the detail of that on page 23. We're noting then on page 24 where that leaves us in terms of a position statement. Moving on then, we then had adjustments to the programme agreed for individual projects that we were looking for member approval for, and that's back in June time. So you can see a list there in terms of new projects that have come in and the funding for them, including some big projects for Here Mars Park and Ride, for example, some Lanark interchange monies. We've got the CEIF programme, which is our revolving fund for energy efficiency projects. Those are noted on page 26. And then the next set of exceptions, as we call them, that went to Executive Committee at the end of August are noted on page 27. So again, some moves and changes there, mainly around bringing in additional money for some play area development, and also just a profile of spend for the energy efficiency project at Cathcart Road, and also bringing in the second tranche of monies for the Leisure and Culture Transformation Fund, with a bit of detail there in page 27 about how that will be spent. Over the page, on page 28, again, some more new monies coming into play in terms of new projects that we're bringing on stream. And the final set then is on page 29, where we've got some, again, additional spend and additional budget coming into the programme. So all of that culminates in our position statement on Appendix C, which is on page 30, which shows you that a revised budget from the 64 at the bottom, the base budget position, I suppose, back in February, we're now sitting with a total revised budget of £73.8 million. Over the page, on page 31, you can see how that's spread across all of the resources. And on page 32, in Appendix D, you can see the funding package that supports that programme of spend. So in the usual way, we've got a significant amount for prudential borrowing. That's all been formally approved by members over the years. Borrowing tends to be the thing that we would slip first, in terms of we'd always use our external funding or our government grant first. So we have carried that borrowing forward as and when we're required to. And then the other chunk of money there that you will see is our general capital grant from the Scottish Government. And that takes us on to the physical element of the programme. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So are we, sorry, just a bit confusing. Are we going to go to Amy just now or just do that later on? Oh, there we go.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
As at period 4, currently we're sitting with no projects behind programme, and we have no projects, a significant amount of projects complete, a couple of projects, 106 projects on programme, and 6 projects with altered briefs. So at this time, there is no project currently behind programme. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jamie. All right. Do we have any questions for that part? Nope. Okay. And we can agree and note the report. Thank you, Councillor. And moving on to item number 6, it's the Capital Budget Monitoring 2025-2026 Housing Capital Programme, and that's on pages 45 to 52. And back to you, Lorraine.
Thank you. So the housing programme then for the new financial year, the main substance of the report you can see in section 4 in the middle of page 45. So we had approved a programme of £85.9 million back in February, and that assumed, as I mentioned earlier, the carry forward of £4.1 million. But now that we have an additional amount at carry forward, that's an increase to the budget that we expect to spend in the current financial year. We also got a minor increase of £24,000 in our affordable housing grant, so we built that into the programme. And we're also noting there in section 4.3 that we have had confirmation of an additional allocation of the National Acquisition Programme funding from the Scottish Government, and that totals £1.767 million. But just given the fact that we have a programme in place and we've got a finite amount of spend that we can actually incur in a year, rather than adding to the programme, we've used that to offset borrowing, and that borrowing can carry forward for use next year. So that hasn't changed excuse me, the overall value of the programme. In section 4.4, we're discussing the fact that we have an amount of money that we're bringing into the council's programme again in terms of affordable housing supply. So originally this has been allocated to registered social landlords, but in discussions with the RSLs, they don't need that money in the current financial year, so it's coming back to the council. So again, rather than adding to our programme, which we've already got in place, we're just going to use that to offset borrowing and keep our expenditure programme in line. We've also taken account in section 4.5 of an extra £160,000 coming from the Climate Emergency Fund from the government, and that's for approved spend on council houses. So while it is a general services programme, the spends on council houses, so we'll monitor it as part of this programme. So what that's doing, all of those moves and changes are resulting in a total programme now for the year of £87.7 million, and you can see that at the top of page 46. And in terms of spend for the year, we're still looking to fully spend that programme at this point in time. The funding then is in line with the spend profile, and as at the 11th of July, we had spent £14.3 million and we had £14.3 million of funding received. If I can take you across to Appendix A, which is on page 48, you can see the expenditure budget at the top, totalling 87.7 with spend to the middle of July of 14.3. And then below that, you can see how the programme is actually funded. So we've got some money coming from the Housing Revenue Account, 35 million. We've also got an element of borrowing, which we use to match against the money that we get from the Scottish Government for our housing programme, our actual council house building programme. And then we've also got the new build money from the government of £18.8 million. And that's all from the financial perspective. Thank you. If I can hand over to Amy, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, as at period end 11th of July, we're currently reporting no projects behind programme on this programme as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Lorraine. I don't have any questions. Does anybody else have any questions? No. Okay. Can we agree and note the report? Oh. Are you there? Sorry. There was a wee audio thing there. Julia, can you hear us?
Yes, slight delay with Confero, I'm afraid. Yes, agreed, Chair.
Thank you. No problem. Cheers. Okay, moving on to item number 7 now. It's the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2024 to 2025, pages 53 to 66. And Lorraine.
Thank you again, Chair. So this again is the old year report for, and it will cover both General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account at the end of the year. Very conscious again that this is out of date, but I'll just give you a high-level position statement in terms of where we are. Excuse me. And this reflects the position that was agreed by the Executive Committee back in June. Probably the main substance of the report is included in section 4 for your information. And what you can see in section 4.2 is that we had an outturn, year-end outturn position of 548,000 of an underspend, and that takes account of a number of proposed transfers to reserves, both from the probable outturn exercise, but also in terms of the year-end itself. So the probable outturn transfers were already approved back in January time, I think, or early February, and we also had additional ones at the end of the year. Excuse me. Table 1 shows you that from a resource perspective, we are showing a slight underspend after transfers of 42,000. We had an underspend of 193 in our loan charges, and in corporate items we had an underspend of 360,000, with a very minor variation in the council tax there, a slight under recovery of 47. In terms of the details, you can see in section 4.4 we have the details across the resources, culminating in that 42,000, and probably I would pick out in section 4.5 there, we're showing within Community and Enterprise Resources, they had an underspend of 700,000 in relation to SLLC, property utilities that the council holds the budget for. And we're looking to transfer that to reserves for use in future budget strategies, and that's what the arrangement we've come to with SLLC. In terms of section 4.6, we're just noting there, just for your information, the position statement in terms of adults and older people. So we're including within our overall position a 650,000 commitment in relation to the element of the budget delegated to the IJB. So that's being set aside for their future use. And similarly within the Housing and Technical Resources position, we have a commitment assumed for a transfer to reserves for AIDS and Adaptations budget, again, for the IJB, the Scheme of Assistance Funding. And we're looking to leave both of those sums of money with the IJB for their future use. I'm noting in section 4.8 the underspend on loan charges and the reasons for that. And in terms of section 4.9, corporate items there is showing in the table the reasons for the better position in our corporate items as we move towards the year end. And by and large, that's because we had a better position in terms of the bad debt provision from a corporate perspective, because some of the resources were able to accommodate some bad debt provisions within their own year-end position. Section 4.10 gives you a bit of information in relation to the service concessions position, and that's an area that we've been progressing from a technical accounting perspective over the last couple of years. So we're just noting there we had the benefit of that money, an underspend at the end of the year, and we were looking to put that towards managing the council's budget strategy. It's a one-off sum of money, and we're using that towards our budget strategy moving forward. We're also noting in section 413 we have allocated funding to the insurance fund. We've been experiencing, as you'll be well aware, the impact of several storms over recent years, which are impacting on general services and the housing revenue account. And we are looking at the impact of that, both in terms of costs that we're incurring and also the potential impact on our premiums moving forward. So we're looking to try and put some money into the insurance fund when we were able to at the end of the financial year. And the final thing there, just in terms of the finance and corporate position, in terms of the transfers to reserves, was that's where the contribution went from the insurance fund from finance and corporate. In terms of council tax, we're just noting there in section 4.19 we had an over recovery for the year at 3.2, but that was slightly less than we had expected, but it was marginal given the level that we're talking about. And in terms of then the transfers to reserves, we're just noting them in section 4.19. There's quite a lot of detail in the appendices to the report in terms of the probable outturn transfers and the year-end transfers noted in Appendix 3. And we had additional transfers at the year-end, which totalled £9 million, and those are detailed in Appendix 4. Taking all of that into account, we had a year-end position of 548,000, and we're noting there in section 4.22 what we're intending to do with that. So 40,000 going to support the continuation of the Winter Wishes programme, and 508,000 again going into the council reserves to help support the pay award moving forward. Noting there in section 4.24, the year-end accounting transactions that we mentioned when we were talking about capital, so just that switch between revenue and capital, but it has no impact on our bottom line position. And then section 5 of your report looks at the housing revenue account. We have a break-even position, as we always would have, because we use the HRA reserve as the balance. The transfer from reserves was a little bit higher than the probable outturn, and that was really because we had additional loan charges and spend, which had come through at the end of the financial year. And we also had an overspend in repairs and maintenance, offset by some additional income from rents and bad debts. So it wasn't too far away from where we expected to be, but it did have a slight different impact on the use of reserves. In terms of the appendices to the report, Appendix 1 shows you the position on the general fund account and just takes account of all the narrative explanation I've just given you. Appendix 2 gives you a bit more detail on each of the individual lines, which I wasn't proposing to go through again. I've gone through the report, so that should probably give you the highlights. Appendix 3 on page 62 gives you our probable outturn transfers to reserves, and then if you go to Appendix 4, that's your additional year-end transfers, just noted there in detail and giving you a bit of a feel for what each of the transfers is actually for, and they're all in our earmarked reserves in the balance sheet for those particular purposes, and they were all approved by elected members back in June. The next page in your paper, page 65, is Appendix 5, and that's your housing revenue account at the end of the year. And that's where you can see the variation in our use of reserves, which balances that account off at the end of the year. And that's us for the revenue account for the year end. So apologies, it is quite a detailed paper. There is quite a lot in it, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lorraine. I've got no questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have a question.
Perfect.
Just given the detail of the housing revenue account contributing to the break-even position, it would be useful to know, particularly because the housing revenue account is effectively tenants' rents and can be used only for those future purposes, what the impact of the additional national insurance contributions that the UK government will expect now has been on the HRA going forward. Although I do think that it would be useful to know that for the whole of the council, but particularly for the HRA, given the fact that this is effectively tenant rents that are contributing into that.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Mars, for your question. Off the top of our head, we think the cost to the housing revenue account is about 300,000 in the new financial year. And obviously, you're absolutely correct that will have to be managed within the housing revenue account itself, because it is a ring-fenced account. It is paid for by the rents, by and large. That's the majority of the income, the vast majority of the income. So yes, that will be included in the position in 2025-26 as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Is anybody else? Are you want to come back, Julia?
If you don't mind, Chair, yes, just it would be interesting if we have, and I know that we're dealing with the housing revenue paper at the moment, but it would be useful to know the scale of the contribution, the extra contributions across the council, if that's known in terms of the general revenue, although I do realise that it's a separate paper.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we had an estimate, Councillor Mars, that we included in our budget paperwork back in February time, because we were aware of the potential costs, of the increased national insurance contributions. I can't remember the figures off the top of my head. I've got a rough idea, but I don't want to misquote them. So if you don't mind, I'll come back to you on that specifically. I'll just get that extract out of the paper and send that to you. Thank you.
Okay, is that, you happy with that? Councillor Mars, is that
yes,
all right?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Super, thank you. Okay, can we agree that report? Thank you, Councillor Mars. Moving on to item number 4.8, and that's the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2024 to 2025 Detailed Resource Analysis, pages 67 to 150, and Graham Booth.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 8 is the report for the last financial year dating all the variance and trend analysis. Again, I would probably propose I could take any questions just in particular in relation to last year, and then can go through the new year in a bit more detail given how we've moved on. But as I say, happy to take any questions on anything from, I think, up to page 149 in terms of the social work trend analysis. But as I say, happy to take any questions on any of the rules up to that point, and then I can go through in a bit more detail, Chair.
That's good. Thank you very much. I've got no questions. Does anybody else have any? Nope. Could we agree and note item 8? Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, as the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2025 to 2026, pages 151 to 156. And back to you, Olivia.
Thanks, Chair. So the New Year revenue account then is the position statement as at the 11th of July, and that's pretty much covered, excuse me, in section 4 of your report. So starting at the bottom of page 151, the projected outturn is a break-even at the moment, and the actual spend to date is shown in Appendix 1, just for your information. As you'll remember, how we're presenting our monitoring now is about a forecast position. Paragraph 4.2 just notes that from 4.3 onwards, what we're doing is giving a high-level update on a number of key budget issues. Starting in section 4.3, we're just noting there we have the pay award position now agreed for the Scottish Joint Council, craft operatives and chief officials in terms of a 4% uplift in the current year and 3.5% for next year. That pay has already been paid, that pay award, and we are expecting to get money from the Scottish Government in terms of a 1% contribution towards that. So that will help in terms of the impact of that in the current year, and we're looking at that as part of our budget strategy work moving forward. We don't have any information yet on the teachers' pay award, and we will bring that to elected members when that becomes available. We're noting in section 4.5 there just the position statement on teacher numbers and reduced class contact time. In terms of the teacher numbers funding, you might remember back in February time we had allocated an amount of money, 4.2 million, which would be required if we had to reinstate teacher numbers to the 2023 level. Senior officers of the council have been involved in discussions with the government over a number of months, and we now no longer have the need to restore teacher numbers to that higher level. So we've transferred that amount of money to reserves, and just given the pressures that we have in terms of the pay award expectations for future years, then we've looking to set that aside for pay award costs. We're noting in section 4.6 there is still a risk in relation to reducing class contact time. That's very much a current topic of conversation between COSLA, local government and the Scottish Government. And again, we'll provide updates to elected members as and when there is any realisation or progress on that in terms of an agreement. Additional support for learning is noted in section 4.8. Again, you may remember back at settlement time, we had an allocation of 1.8 million towards additional support for learning for the council. That was part of the 28 million national amount of money set aside. Education Resources are currently finalising how they will propose to spend those monies, and we're looking to bring an update on that to the Executive Committee in September. So we'll bring an update on that to yourselves at our next meeting. That's likely to include additional staffing costs and consideration of additional costs associated with ASL, including potentially the cost of pay increases for that service area. Section 4.8 notes packaging extended producer responsibility, or PEPR as we call it, because that's a bit easier to say. Again, we touched on this when we reported the budget to committee back in February time, and I think we have maybe touched on it subsequently. We do have new waste regulations that came in force on the 1st of January. We are expecting an allocation from DEFRA of £7.7 million for the current financial year. The Community and Enterprise Resources Committee in the middle of August approved a new staffing structure to assist with the additional costs of meeting the requirements of the regulations. So that allocation of 610,000 is noted in the middle of paragraph 4.8 would come off that £7.7 million, and that leaves us a balance of £7.1 million that we have allocated to the Community and Enterprise Resources budget for the cost of the collection of household packaging waste as required by the scheme. What that does is it releases core council costs, or core council budget rather I should say, which would leave us with an underspend in the current year. I'm just noting there that, as agreed at the Executive Committee, we'd be looking to consider how we use that money moving forward, and that's a decision that will be taken by the Executive Committee. So we have left that sitting to the side just now, and we'll work with whatever decision members take moving forward. In terms of Section 5, we're noting there the housing revenue account position, again showing a break-even position for the year. And if you go to the appendices, Appendix 1 is on page 155. So again, shows us the position as it stands, showing a full forecast for the year. And on the right-hand side, it shows you a net surplus position, so more income than spend at that point in the year, and that's a timing issue only. And that's at the middle of July. And the next appendix on page 156 shows the housing revenue account position for that same time frame. And again, showing a break-even position, we don't expect much of a variation in terms of the transfer from the reserves from the balance sheet. And again, on the right-hand side, you can see the position of the actual spend and income as at the 11th of July. And that's all for that report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Laurie. I don't have any questions. Does anybody else have any? Nope. Okay, can we agree that report? Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 10, and that's the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2025 to 26 Detailed Resource Analysis. It was pages 157, and I'm assuming it's 200 and not 2000. So, Graham, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 10 report for this financial year for the period up to the 11th of July, and that details the variance and trend analysis. Starting with Community and Enterprise Resources then, the summary position is detailed on page 159, and this shows a break-even position overall for the resource in terms of the projection. And again, within the table there, you can see there are some variances across services with underspends in facilities, waste and grounds, planning and environmental offsetting a projected overspend within roads. But overall, as I say, projecting a break-even position at this point. The detailed variance explanations are shown on pages 160 to 164, and the detailed trend analysis is on pages 165 to 168. And as I'm happy to take any questions in relation to Community and Enterprise Resources, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Do you have any questions? No, if we move on.
Okay, thank you. Education Resources next, the summary position detailed on page 169, and again projecting a break-even position at this point in the financial year. The detailed variance explanations are on pages 170 to 172, and the trend analysis is on page 173 to 175. And happy to take any questions in relation to any of the education variance explanations.
Thanks, Graham. Nothing from me. Does anybody else have anything? Nope. If we can move on to the next one, please.
Finance and Corporate next. The summary position is detailed on page 177, and again showing an overall projected break-even position. And again, within here, we do have some variances across services as well, with an underspend in transactions, offsetting some projected overspends within our admin and licensing and personnel services. And again, the year-to-date actual position is also shown there for information. The detailed variance explanations for Finance and Corporate are following on page 178 and 179, and then the detailed trend analysis from page 180 to 181. And again, happy to take any questions on any of the information contained for the Finance and Corporate Resources.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? No. Okay, if you can move on to the next part, please, Graham.
Housing and technical resources next, in the summary position detailed on page 183, and they're showing a projected break-even position again across housing and property services. The detailed variance explanations for the general services are shown on page 184, and the detailed trend analysis is thereafter on pages 185 to 187. For the HRA, we're noting that there's no significant variances to report at this time, but the detailed trend analysis is on pages 190 to 191. And again, happy to take any questions in relation to the housing technical resources position, either for the general services or HRA, Chair.
Super, thank you. And is there any questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next part, please.
Finally then, the social work resources position. The summary is on page 193, and we're showing a break-even position overall for the resource and across the services, and the detailed variance explanations are shown in pages 194 to 196, with a detailed trend analysis on page 197 to 199. And again, that's all from me, Chair, in terms of this report, but again, happy to take any questions in relation to social work resources.
Thank you very much, Graham. For that last part, have we any questions? Nope. Okay, can we agree that the entirety of that report? Oh, we missed you. We missed you, did we?
I agreed, Chair. I think Convero might have confounded me again.
No bother, we got you that time. That's good. Thank you very much. And finally, we've got the last one, which is the urgent business, and there's no urgent business, so we'd like to thank everyone for attending today's meeting and formally close the meeting. So thank you very much.